comes out, he had first disclosed his mental anguish at a Heads Together event in Kensington Palace. He says to them, as though it had never occurred to anyone can suffer from mental health problems, even a member of the royal family. Okay, thanks, Elmo. We had no idea that that was possible. Good morning, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Revenge Review. And in this book, we are finding out all the facts that eluded us when we were reading Spare. Spare was such a weird book. Such a weird book. And it just left us with a lot of questions. So we're reading Revenge and we're getting a lot of answers. The last two episodes that I did on chapter 15, it was a 2-part episode because it was so long and there were so many stories, and so many of those stories spoke directly into stuff that we had discussed in Spare. So if you followed along for the Spare journey and you had a lot of questions and you are just now keeping up with Revenge, I would highly, highly suggest you go back and watch those last 2 episodes, because I think you'll find them very cathartic to finally get some answers to some of this, Harry and Meghan garbage. This chapter today is called Hiccups. It's chapter 16. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the state of the royal family when Meghan entered in. So she kind of flew under the radar because they were already having some of their own issues. Particularly, one of the things that people were consumed about was getting Charles ready to take the throne eventually, because it was obvious it was going to be a responsibility of his eminently. So they were distracted by that. They were distracted by the fact that Prince Andrew was just wilding out in ways heretofore unknown. So they had to get him under control. And then there was some, petty foolishness aimed at William, saying he wasn't working hard enough. And so they were trying to keep everyone happy with him. So when Meghan entered into the picture, Harry, for the first time in a while, was seeming really content and happy, and the media was singing his praises, and the palace was more than happy to feed the narrative of, well, look at this happy prince though, like he's doing good. So if Meghan was helping him and keeping him happy, the palace was content to let him be. But then Meghan started doing things and putting herself out there in ways that were inappropriate for somebody associated with the royal family. So then the palace had to swivel over to her and be like, all right, let's deal with you. So one of the things that has always surprised me is, how did Meghan get in at all? Like, why weren't there people in place, in position to sort of pick her off and get rid of her? Because it seemed so insane to me that they would let Harry, who's so impressionable and so unable and so clearly somebody that the palace has always had to run interference for, why is he being allowed to just go willy-nilly out into the world and pick whatever random girl happens to stagger to his doorstep? And it just seemed to me that they, why wasn't somebody there to just counsel him, maybe show him the truth to some of the things that were going on, maybe be like, okay, maybe she's telling you this, let me tell you about some of the things that we've discovered about her. Seems like there should be some intel or something, because these people are part of the royal family. So why is somebody letting this grifter wander in? That never made sense to me. But now, after reading this chapter, I think, you know what, it could have just been that they were so busy trying to sort everything else out that seemed major, that whoever Harry's dating, whatever, okay. And I think that the palace certainly knew, and certainly was more aware of how serious the relationship was than the public. The public didn't realize for a long time how serious Harry and Meghan were. The palace did know more. But I still don't think that they realized what they were dealing with in Meghan. And I think that she was, at this time, able to present an image to them where she seemed a little over emotional, but not manipulative and evil. She just seemed like somebody who needed to maybe get a grip on her emotions as far as what the media was presenting about her, because she was very upset about that. But other than that, I think that people thought that they could sort of handle her and sort of maybe teach her, well, she's just acting that way because she doesn't know yet. But once she knows, hardly. I mean, once she knew, that just made her even more rebellious. No one's going to tell me how it's going to be, And we're going to see, there's a scenario that comes up with some of her charity work that I'm like, girl, you should have known that wasn't going to work. Even though I feel it was a noble cause. She just had to have realized, okay, but you don't get to do that now. Which leads me to say, and then I'll get on with it. In the chapter last chapter, when she goes to that shooting weekend at Sandringham, and it's explosive because she can't just let people be. She's got to, hustle on over and preach, got to preach you a sermon. I got to preach you a sermon. I got to give you a homily. It's like always, always, always attacking people because they said something. I feel like it's important to say that I'm not saying she had to agree with everything she was hearing. I'm not even saying she couldn't have been offended by some of what she was hearing. Because again, we don't know what they were saying. They might have been wildly offensive. It's just not the atmosphere and the place to decide that you're going to tell people what to do. But apparently she was offended enough that she ruined the weekend for everyone involved because she had to come over and say, actually, no. Actually, no, that's not how we talk. Hey, but do you even know what you just said? Do you even know what that means? Do you understand the undertones of racism? I hear transphobia. It's like all of this stuff that just makes people unbearable. That's what she was displaying. I think if she felt that this was this offensive, if she was amongst people who were so wildly offensive that she could hardly catch her breath to go and exhort the next person about how to be a better person, why would she involve herself in this community? If it was so offensive to her that she couldn't even rest, that everybody, she was just like, running herself ragged trying to correct everybody. Then move away from these people who you feel like are entrenched in misogyny and white supremacy. Don't associate with these people. And that's the thing. It didn't really bother her. She just had to show Harry, you don't need to be associated with these people. It was just another way for her to drag him away and say, you don't realize this because you've always been here, but let me tell you what they're really saying, what they really mean. Then she drags his impressionable ass out of there. It was just another way of her controlling him. In that same way, the causes that she wanted to put forth, the charities she wanted to be involved in, if those were really things that were meaningful to her, if that was work that she felt was vital to her soul, she would not have joined forces with the royal family who was going to say, we have to remain neutral, so there's some things you just can't do. There's some work that you cannot do. It's inappropriate for somebody in your station. As long as you're with us, go and be and do all you want to do as an individual. But if you're associating with us, you can't do that. If she really cared about those causes, she would have said to Harry, I hate that we can't be together. Unfortunately, the stars are not aligned. So I don't necessarily agree with your friends. I think that you are involved with and are deeply entrenched with a group of people who I find objectionable on every level. And if I'm involved with you, I can't do this charity work that I feel I was called to do. So it breaks my heart, but we have to break up. Okay? That's what a normal person would have done if they really believed everything they said they believed. But she doesn't believe those things. It's just work she's done. It's just words she's saying to manipulate her environment and those around her. Okay, in this chapter, it's just more Meghan markling all over the place. This is exceedingly entertaining. I just can't believe some of the stuff I'm reading in this chapter. Oh, also in this chapter, this is when we talk about when she goes to Skippy and Skip's wedding. Remember those pictures we've seen of her just being sour as all get out? We talk about that today, so it's a great chapter. All right, chapter 16, hiccups. Okay, we start this chapter out where Meghan has just spent Christmas with Doria and Thomas Markle in Santa Barbara, but weirdly at a hotel. Okay, so I don't understand the spending major holidays with your family at places that are not your home. Okay, the fact that Harry arranged for her to go stay in a mansion for Thanksgiving in the last chapter was weird to me. Why can't she go to Doria's house? I know that Thomas Markle lives in Mexico, so obviously, it might not be convenient to go stay at his place, nor would we maybe want to because I guess he was kind of messy. But Doria's got a house. Why are they not having Thanksgiving there? Anyway, whatever. She had gone and spent Thanksgiving with her parents in a mansion. This time for Christmas, she's invited them to eat dinner with her at the hotel in Santa Monica. I don't understand this, but she did. Thomas was glowing from this Father's Day card that she had sent him way back in June. He felt like, he wasn't seeing much of Meghan yet right now because she was living the jet setter lifestyle, but he didn't know that she was actively working to cut him out of her life. Because the last he'd heard from her, and the last expression of love that he'd received from her back at Father's Day, she had sent him this card. And it was a picture of she and he when she was little. And superimposed on the card was this message. Now you guys tell me if this sounds like anything that would be meaningful to you. Happy Father's Day, Daddy. I'm still your buckaroo. And to this day, your hugs are still the best in the whole wide world. Thanks for my work ethic, for the importance of handwritten thank you notes, and for giving me the signature Markle nose. I love you so. Bean. You guys, what is this? This is not something that is meaningful. Who writes somebody a Father's Day card and then spends the entire card talking about themselves? My work ethic, my ability to write those thank you notes, my special calligraphy, my nose, which I had changed even though it's your signature Markle nose. It's like, why would you even bring up the nose? You must, if you loved it so much, where is it? Anyway, that is just so typical of somebody who is completely and 100% self-involved. To write a note of love to somebody and then spend the whole time talking about how you're so awesome. Meghan, how are you so old and know so little? Okay, well, at the end of the visit, she tells her dad, Daddy, stay the night at the hotel. Now, it does not say that she offered to pay for him to stay. Maybe she did. But I feel like this is reminiscent of when she told him to fly to Toronto and visit her. Daddy, you never come and visit me in Toronto. But she knew that he was poor as a church mouse, so how was he going to? And I just think that this is so typical of Meghan, where she wants him to do things, but he can't do it. She knows why he can't. And then she sits back and she's like, I wish my dad loved me. Well, he's going to look back on this and wish he had stayed, because this was the last time he saw his daughter. He's never seen her since. Way back in 2016. And why? Why would she do this to him? It's never been clear to me why she cut him out of her life. Except for the fact that he knew the truth about who she was, and he was his own individual, and he was going to talk if he felt like it. When he refused to have Tom and Samantha, be quiet, and she couldn't control him enough for him to control his other kids, I think she realized then that he was a liability. Things certainly escalated after that little visit, and negatively escalated for Meghan, because remember how she had gotten married to Trevor in Jamaica and had made extra efforts for no one to ever find out that she had been married? Well, in late January, after seeing her father, and maybe this is why she got so mad, because he's the only one who had any pictures. In late January, pictures of that wedding came out. They came out in the Daily Mail, and alongside those pictures was a very unflattering description of Meghan's family. Contrary to the loving image presented by Tracy Dooley, her sister-in-law, who had sold some pictures to the media of Meghan when she was young, but had said a lot of really positive things about Meghan, and how she had always been so lovely, so warm, so bubbly, so empathetic. Alongside the sister-in-law, Tom Jr. had said, oh, she'll always be the princess of our hearts. We've always loved her. We think she's great. Meghan didn't mind those pictures coming out of her as a little kid. But this was a whole different kettle of fish. Those pictures that came out had been taken by her dad. They were the only pictures that anybody had. So obviously that would have not been marks in Thomas Markle's favor. Then the picture of the family that was painted was super negative. This portrayed the Markles as infamous for boozing, bust-ups, and bankruptcy. Twice married Tom Jr., a former bankrupt and heavy drinker, was not speaking to his father and sister. Samantha, Meghan's wheelchair-bound half-sister, was described as the twice-divorced mother of 3, who'd also been bankrupt and lost custody of her children. Doria's past was reported to be shrouded in mystery. While she currently worked as an older adults therapist at a Los Angeles charity, the records showed that she had faced eviction while unemployed. No one could explain why Meghan had lived throughout her school years with Thomas. Where was Doria, journalists asked, during those 10 years? So, Meghan is distraught because she thought that she was getting a hold on this negative narrative. Remember, we had talked about how when she first came out as Harry's girlfriend, everyone was like, oh, how on, he's dating that cool American. She's an actress, right? And then they're like, but wait a second, she's kind of weird. What's been going on with her life? She's kind of wild and sort of a woman of the world. And then they dug around that. And then they settled on this idea that, well, you know, Harry seems happy. Let's just let them have their joy. And then, she felt like, okay, good. All right, maybe the negative is behind me. We're ready for some better talk. But then this story came out with those pictures of her wedding to Trevor. And so she's right back where she started. Although, at the same time, while that negative press was going on, she couldn't be totally discouraged because the Daily Mail was coming out with some positive stuff. The Daily Telegraph had some positive words to say. One journalist wrote admiringly, "Is it just me, or are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle utterly adorable and a source of endless fascination? I can't wait for Duchess Meghan." The Daily Mail got in on some of this praise and worship of Meghan, and even decided that they would turn on Kate and called her frumpy and straight-laced. Okay, well, where did they get that adjective, frumpy, in connection with Catherine? That's like, if you're going to criticize somebody, at least make it so that anybody could see your point. No one is going to look at Catherine and go like, yeah, no, she's pretty frumpy. She never did look good. Why is she always in these untailored clothes? Why is she always a hot mess? I mean, it's like, if you're going to insult somebody, have the intelligence to make it at least make sense. All right, well, because Meghan was losing her hold on the media representation of her, she turns to Harry again. Solve my problems for me, Harry. They're talking mean about me again. So Harry is like, you know, his happiness depends on her happiness. So if she's upset, he's upset. And she tells him that he's got to do something. He's got to get the palace behind her. You know, that statement that they put out just didn't do enough. And it's probably because Jason Knopf was at the helm. That awful guy who seemed to have no idea what was going on. What an amateur. Just amateur hour when you ask Jason for help. Well, at the same time, he was her only recourse. So she shuffles over to Jason and asks Jason to help her out. Jason told her that if she really wanted people to stop talking about her, full stop, she needed to stop progressing the narrative by feeding tidbits and constantly alluding to her relationship to Harry on social media, on the TIG. She needed to cut ties with this idea that she could titillate her readers and her subscribers with information and then be shocked that people were writing in the blanks when there were just so many blanks to fill. He says, look, you need to quit with this, you know, H&M necklace and all this, you know, dogs wearing the sweater and, you know, these little pictures of you in London. If you don't want people to talk, don't feed the gossip mill. Meghan decided to act as though she was still being victimized by the palace. She calls a friend, completely distraught. You know, after Knopf says, maybe cut out the necklace business, she calls a friend, close to tears and completely distraught. She says to her friend, I can't win. They make me out like I'm to blame for these pictures, that it looks like I'm encouraging them. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Just do what they tell you to do. You don't need to defend your behavior. Just be like, oh, oops, okay. You're right. You're right. I should stop alluding to it. I'll find something else to talk about on my Instagram and on the TIG. I don't have to talk about this. If she was really looking for a way to save her relationship with Harry and truly have it on their terms, she would listen to every word that came out of Jason's mouth. But she's not. She's not. She wants to whine and complain and be a victim and play that she is Princess Diana and continue to cosplay that the palace is against her in every way, shape, and form. The thing is that you are not dealing with the same palace that Princess Diana was dealing with. You're not. You're not. They learned so much about how to deal with drama during the Diana years that they have there's just so many things that are not the same. There's so much modernization that has happened since the years of Diana that there's no possible way that Meghan could have ever entered the picture and had the same experience. If you're being an objectionable person, yes, they're going to still call you out. It's not like, oh, well, in this day and age, you get a free pass. You're still going to be very regulated in your speech and in your actions. Duh, that's just how it goes. But this little business about how, she's creating these scenarios in which she's being victimized so she can cry all day long. So she calls to her friends saying, I don't know what to do. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. To some people in the palace, they just felt like Meghan needed to get a grip. I mean, just come on, okay? Are you in or are you out, okay? If you're with us, this is how we behave. If you're not, then just go your separate ways. God be with you. No, she's got to cry and carry on. She's got to drag Harry into it. Her distress is his distress. If they're going to be a couple, they have to bear each other's burdens, and this is the burden she expects him to bear. Well, as you can imagine, he was probably pretty worn down by this. By her constantly crying about his staff, whining about what it is that they will and won't let her do, coupled with the fact that she is constantly on him about his friends. That shooting weekend in Sandringham did not go well. Everyone was appalled by her behavior, except for Harry, who didn't seem super clued in at the time that people didn't like what was happening. And this is something that I'm just going to take this moment real quick. Tom Bauer says that Harry didn't realize that what was happening was offensive. I think that Harry is not good at verbalizing, but I don't think he doesn't feel things. I think he just doesn't know how to say what he's feeling. And I would submit to you, in that scene in the Netflix documentary, when Meghan does that over the top bow and is mocking his family and their customs, the look on his face is one of contempt and disgust that she is maligning his family. But he never has found his ability to voice that distaste for the way that she represents his family. So he's going along, but I don't think it's that he didn't realize it. I think he just didn't know how to say, I don't like that you do that, without driving her away, because there was enough in the relationship that he felt like he needed, that he thought, I guess I have to make my peace with the way I feel about that. It's just the way she expresses herself. It's just her Americanism. It's not that she's trying to be mean. It's just that I need to get used to that part of her personality. But he still hasn't gotten used to it, because we saw it on his face when she was mocking his family. I think the same goes for what she was doing at that party. Tom Bauer says, and I reiterated in the last episode, but I've thought about it since, that he had no idea what was going on. I think he did. I think he just doesn't know how to say, I don't like it. And I think he puts the blame on himself, as many people who are in abusive relationships do. Oh, it's my fault for not understanding what they meant there, or I just need to get used to that, or it's my own shortcoming, I'm just misreading, I'll get over it, I'll swallow it, it's not that big of a deal, I'll get past it, I just need to, white knuckle it until I can get past that part of their personality, because there's a lot of other good things I like. Now, with that being said, Harry had received an invitation to go to Tom Skippy Inskip's wedding. Skippy Inskip was one of his closest and dearest friends. He had invited Harry to the wedding. And there have been reports, although I will say Tom Bauer does not make the same report. There have been reports that Meghan was not invited to this wedding. It's a very small gathering. There's only 40 people at this event. So it would have made sense if Meghan wasn't invited. Harry was. And people have said that there was some kind of breakup period going on here, that Harry was taking a little bit of distance from Meghan, and that she decided she would go to the wedding. Since she knew that it was happening, she would just make her own way. Now, again, Tom Bauer does not say that Meghan was not invited. He suggests that they had both been invited. Be that as it may, Harry was coming in from London. Meghan arrived in a Toronto friend's private plane. So she clearly made arrangements to come and impress people. Otherwise, she could have just flown down on any plane. Why did she have to take a friend's plane down to Jamaica? That doesn't make any sense. So either it was an act of desperation, like I got to get on a plane right now, or I want to impress these people and make them think that I'm really such a much. I don't know. But again, we will never know if she was even invited. That seems to be in question. At least I haven't done enough research to find out the true answer to that. And I also have never been able to find out, was she really on a break with Harry at this point? Again, that is not even alluded to in Tom Bauer's book. He acts like they were both invited and that they just happened to be at separate places, so they came separately. Okay, that's like the least interesting thing about the story. I would think that Harry probably, after the situation with his friends at that shooting weekend, was probably relieved to think that Meghan might not get to come. Because he probably thought, I really want to go to that wedding. Meghan doesn't like my friends. If he didn't invite her, it may have just been because he truly thought she didn't want to go. Well, of course she wanted to go. She wants to hobnob with the elite. And she certainly isn't going to allow him to hobnob with his friends, who she has made a very poor impression on and who do not like her. She's not going to let him go to that event alone. So even if he told her, hey, I'm going to go to this wedding, but you don't need to come, acting like he would have felt like, oh, I'm doing her a service by not making her feel like she has to come to this thing with my friends. Her reaction would have been like, oh, no, I'm coming. Because she's not going to let him hang around all weekend with these people who might turn him against her. So she makes her way down there. Again, this girl does not know how to make a favorable first impression. In Spare, Harry acts like Meghan was so lovely and everybody thought she was divine, and everybody, from the get-go was just shocked and awed by her kindness and her thoughtfulness. He talks about how lovely she was with the staff, how she was always over there offering William some kind of homeopathic remedies for his reoccurring cough, how she was so thoughtful about other people. Yet, I have not read one story in Tom Bower's book in which her first introductions were positive. This is yet one more bit of evidence that she does not know how to carry herself with any class or dignity. About 40 guests, including Harry's oldest friends, gathered for the 3-day party at the Round Hill Hotel in Montego Bay. All the parents in attendance fondly remember giving Harry cottage pie and comfort during his teenage years. The close-knit group keenly anticipated meeting Meghan. They were quickly disappointed. Not only did she quibble about the food, but behaved princessy, refusing to engage with Harry's friends. She wasn't interested in us, said one mother. Okay, can you imagine the lack of class to arrive at a wedding and say anything about the food? Look, I've been to my share of podunk weddings, and let me just tell you, it would never even enter my mind to say anything about the food that somebody had served. Yet, at this classy event, in which everything would have been quite luxurious, she thought that she had the right to open her mouth about anything that was being served. And see, this is what I'm talking about. She's just this self-proclaimed expert in all things. But who made her expert on food? Who made her an expert on fashion? Who made her an expert on beauty? She's just decided that she is. So she thinks she's got the right, because she has that blog online about food, that she can come and complain about the food. Oh, you guys went that way with the main dish? Yeah, see, I think that would actually be more appropriate for a barn raising. I think I would have chosen something a little bit more elegant. Because see, that is kind of embarrassing for you. Did you have help though, picking out your menu? Oh, okay, you did. All right, but they're kind of out of touch though with what's current. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have gone with them just because they're going to do some like throwback French stuff. And I think that it would be better for you to just have tried some more exotic flavors. I mean, we are in Jamaica after all. Yeah. Well, like I'll try some of that. Just kind of bland though for my palate. And it just seems like you would have wanted to do something more fun for a wedding. I don't know. That's like, that would have been my take. I would have totally gone a completely different way with this meal, but I actually do know a lot about food. On my blog, like I have so many like awesome recipes you could have done instead. Yeah. I wish that you would have told me, because I could have like had so many ideas. Yeah. Well, I mean, at least none of this food will give your guests indigestion because it's so bland. So you've got that, right? You've got that. Oh, wow. Okay. Can you eat? I mean, that is how I imagine her going into this. Okay. Now, this is a very important event. Even though it was small, Harry going to this friend's wedding, people would have known about it. The fact that Meghan arrived all this way, there would have been media interest in the fact that they were together because the media had not had that many opportunities to take pictures of them together. Well, not surprisingly, people showed up. Not for Meghan, for Harry. So there's paparazzi who have followed. He spotted a photographer in the bushes and lost it completely. he was incandescent. I mean, he was standing there in a swimsuit, but he was just like he like a madman, you know, in his swimming trunks, just raging and screaming and carrying on. And all of his friends who saw it were shocked that he was acting like this because he'd been followed by paparazzi his whole life. And yes, they knew he didn't like it, but for him to be completely losing it like this was a new side that they knew that he had, you know, he had strong feelings about things. But this business of just, you know, acting like a clown, screaming and carrying on, that shocked them because they thought, yeah, but this is not new for you. Why are you acting like this? It's almost like he had to perform for Meghan. Like, yeah, I do take it seriously. I do believe I shouldn't be under these circumstances, you know. And he had to be over there, you know, playing his outrage for her. But I also think that he was probably on edge because Meghan was there and he wasn't able to just enjoy it with his friends. So I think there was a lot going on in him. One, because he thought, you know, was trying to deal with her very clear agitation at the wedding. These pictures of her at this wedding are outrageous. They are so unflattering to her character. And he's probably trying to mitigate her wrath and indignation. Then he spots a paparazzi, knows that so far as he understands, she doesn't like that kind of thing. And then he's trying to deal with his frustration that his friends don't like her. I mean, there was a lot going on. He didn't know how to express it, so he just acted out in rage towards the photographer. His friends were horrified. They continued to dislike Meghan. Their suspicion of Meghan increased. The sentiment was mutual. Meghan disliked Inskip and his crowd. Their jokes and their attitude towards the world was unacceptable to her. So this is the second time his friends have had to deal with her for an extended amount of time. Over the following weeks, Harry's friends agreed that he was rushing too fast towards marriage. Uneasy about the influence on Harry of the woman who had suddenly walked into their lives, their instincts warned them to beware of the intruder. Several shared their fears with William. Inskip was among the first to tell Harry to be cautious. Best to be sure, he said. William spoke next. Don't feel like you need to rush this, he said to his brother. Take as much time as you need to know this girl. After all, he'd known Kate for 8 years before he proposed. And again, I've seen this several times in the comments. Well, Harry didn't have the time. He didn't have 8 years. Well, nobody's asking him to take 8 years. But could you take 1, 2 years? Oh. Furious about the closing ranks, Harry told Meghan. Both agreed they were victims of racism. William, fumed Harry, was a snob. Okay, but that doesn't make sense. William's no snob. He married a girl without title and without rank and just, you know, middle-class girl. You know, so don't even with this, William's a snob. But what is this garbage about we're victims of racism? If you will show me the article in which people are maligning you for your race, I'll be the first one to defend you. If you can show me in which people have spoken about you in ways that are categorically untrue, false, and are completely and totally racist and ugly and misogynistic and white supremacist, I will be the first to defend you. There's not one sane thinking person who wants a society in which racism reigns supreme, okay? But you cannot use those hot words if you cannot prove that it has happened. The number one reason for that is that then those words lose their power. So if you want those words to mean something, you can't use them unless they actually mean what you're trying to say they mean. And if you don't have proof, then you don't have any claims of racism. Also, it was never racism that was coming after Meghan. Now, if she wanted to make an argument that there were some classist situations going on and that people were dragging her because she wasn't of the right class and she didn't live in the right echelon of society, she could have had an argument for that. She could have said, it is unfair and categorically untrue that just because my family has had bankruptcy issues, I am somehow a liability for Harry to know me. That's my family. I've had my whole adult life. I've done all my own things. You should look at what I've managed to do, my life. I am not my dad. I'm not my siblings. I'm not my mother. You know, she could have had an argument about that if she had wanted to go that way. She didn't, though. And if she had come out saying, I hate the fact that because I didn't grow up as wealthy or that my family has, like every family, some issues, I hate that that is all anyone will talk about with me. Because everybody has had the experience of feeling like that they're now being attacked for something they couldn't control in their family's history. You know, maybe your parents had an ugly divorce, or maybe you were poor, whatever it is. There's lots of things that are in our past that we think, it's not fair that I'm bearing the brunt of decisions that I didn't make. If she had come out that way, she would have so many more people sympathize with her and be on her side. But when she went this weird angle of racism, people were like, we're not racist. And then people were turned against her because she was claiming something that had never happened, and it made her untrustworthy. All right, well, Harry strongly resented William coming to him and saying, you should really take a second to think about if you and Meghan are really meant to be. Just take some time to get to know her, okay? Because we are seeing sides of her that maybe you can't because you're wearing your little rose-colored glasses. But, you know, Skippy's telling me that the wedding was kind of bad with her there. The shooting weekend didn't go well. I just think, Harry, that you need to take some time and just consider if she can fit in with us. If she doesn't like anybody that's in our group, I just don't know. I don't know how you will be happy if she's always mad at you. Harry hated it. He'd always resented being below William in the hierarchy. And now William is trying to tell him he can't choose who he wants to date. At least that's how he saw it. Now he's enraged. And he just had this overwhelming sense of inferiority that people wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do. And that almost made him just double down on the whole Meghan thing. You know? He wasn't going to be told what to do. And his relationships with his brother and his friends started breaking down at this point because he saw them as unsupportive. And it didn't help the fact that as soon as they said anything to him, his ally was Meghan. He would run and tell Meghan. Guess what they said now? And of course, she was only too happy to blow up anything that they had said to be extra negative because good, that means she can pull him away. She doesn't want to have to share power with any of those people. She wants to be the only one in control of Harry and by that gain all of the status that he has. So, of course, she's not going to try to help him get past anything that William and Skippy have said. She's going to pour fuel on that fire and try to help that relationship break down faster. A good partner would have said, well, I don't know if you're understanding what he's saying. We haven't really known each other that long. Maybe they misunderstood something I said. You know, a good partner would have tried to help you maintain and manage the relationships. I'm not saying that she had to love the fact that there was criticism, but quite frankly, if she had acted in a way that was classy or if she'd had any dignity in any of these scenarios, they wouldn't have ever had any problems with her. All right, well, okay. This is a very interesting story that we're getting to now. Okay, so already she's trying to tell Harry, you don't need to listen to your friends. You don't need to listen to your brother. Just listen to me. I'm the one. I'm the one that you need to listen to. I can see things the way they really are. I can see things clearly. She felt that because she was in a more solid place, she was much more confident. And she felt that she was in a position now to sort of ignore some of the things that the palace officials were saying to her. Jason Knopf and his weird advice, please. You know, she felt like now I really don't have to worry too much. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Harry won't let me go anywhere. He'll protect me. He's solidly on my side. He will be my voice. So 4 months after moving into Kensington Palace, Meghan was more confident. She calculated that any skepticism about her suitability would be mollified. She chose to ignore the officials' fears that a California actress with a past would not accept the severe restrictions placed on members of the royal family. She thought she could just go on her merry way doing whatever, and they would just have to, make their peace with it. Which is when things went south in January 2017, when she was still working as a World Vision ambassador. Now, World Vision does drill wells in Africa, but they have other projects that they're working around as well. One of the projects was that around the world, and particularly in India, where Meghan was going, girls who are on their period can't go to school. So you're out for a whole week of school, and that was just keeping them behind. And so, like, you miss a week of school every month. That's problematic. So Meghan had strong feelings about it. Well, I feel like this is a worthy cause. Want to get some feminine products to these girls so that they can continue to go to school. That makes good sense. But culturally, that's not accepted. You don't go to school when you are menstruating. So for her to just plow in there and have her say, she felt like she was doing, God's work. But it was inappropriate for her to get embroiled in something in a Commonwealth country that had nothing to do with her, and to castigate and scold the men of that community who did not feel that they were being oppressive. It's just the way that culturally that things were set up. So I completely understand the desire to get products to these girls so that they can continue to go to school. And I understand the desire to help these communities understand that there's no reason for a girl to miss a full week of school every month, and that that's holding her back. I understand the desire to be a voice for those young girls. I don't think that that's not a worthy cause. I just think that if Meghan really felt that it was, she should have decided, I can't be part of the royal family, because the royal family did not support this effort at all. It was not appropriate. And I don't think Meghan, like I said earlier, Meghan doesn't actually believe the things that she says. Because if she did, if this was this important, then this short little relationship she's had with this guy, she's flying back and forth to see, is a long distance relationship. She could have sacrificed that if her goals and ideals were really that important to her. Meghan's visit to India in January 2017 for World Vision illustrated this problem that she could not accept being told what to do. Spearheading a worthwhile campaign targeted at 100 million young girls compelled to stay away from school while they menstruated, she rallied with heartfelt conviction in a speech against India's conservative men who denied girls sanitary pads. Conditioned by discrimination, she said, the girls missed school and suffered unnecessary poverty. Before leaving for India, Harry failed to caution Meghan. While her campaign was acceptable for an actress, it was totally inappropriate for a potential member of the royal family to stir controversy among men in a Commonwealth country who did not believe they were oppressive. Palace officials were not silent. On Meghan's return to London, it was explained to her by one official that she would need to accept restrictions. Meghan smiled and rejected any advice. She had decided that she did not want to become a muted royal. Her 2 visits to Rwanda and one to India would continue to be cited as evidence of her being heavily involved in philanthropic and advocacy work. See, what I think is really interesting is that in Spare, he does talk about her going to India, but like completely does not even discuss why she was going to India. He says that he and Doria and Meghan had a lunch together in California before this trip, and then she and her mom were all excited about when she went and her having a chance to experience some Hindu rituals or something like that. And then Harry tells Meghan, just whatever you do, don't get a picture in front of the Taj Mahal. People are going to think you're trying to be just like my mom. Then she plays that whole, what are you talking about? Wait, a picture of your mom in front of the Taj Mahal? What? Wait, there's a picture of your mom in front of the Taj Mahal? Huh, I guess it's because I never Googled you or your mom or your brother or anybody that I don't know these things. So it was just another episode for him to talk about how Meghan didn't know who he was, because that was something he loved to talk about in Spare, was like how completely and totally devoid of info she had been about him prior to meeting him. He loved to reiterate that narrative, or rather she did, since she wrote Spare. So yeah, they talk about her going to India. None of this controversy, none of the fact that she was going and advocating for something that just would have been inappropriate as a royal to do. And again, I just want to reiterate that I think that this is completely appropriate as far as wanting to get sanitary pads to these girls. That if Meghan thought it was that important, that should have been her goal in life. Not marrying some guy who, within that union, she could not be who she believed that she should be. The palace is very unhappy with Meghan. So she decides that she needs to make sure that they can't push her out. She needs to get the public on her side fully and excited about the relationship. So she tells Harry, you know, there just doesn't feel like much of an announcement that we've made. I mean, people have discovered we're together, but we haven't said openly and clearly that we're together. And I think we need to have a picture together. People need to know that I'm your girl. So they arrange it. Harry agrees. Yes, let's make sure that everyone knows we're together. So nearly after 1 year, Meghan decided that she should be appropriately introduced to the public. And Harry agreed, so a photo was contrived at a polo match. Harry's playing. There is Meghan on the sidelines. When the game is over, he comes over. The photographers have been positioned so that they can get a snapshot of Harry and Meghan kissing at the polo match. Okay, there we go. Here they are. Now they're finally together. Everyone knows they're finally together. Juxtapose that against some photos that came out at the same time. And here's Meghan on Suits looking sultry, and all of the promotional ads for that new show. This is a nightmare. This is a nightmare for everyone involved because the palace doesn't want people thinking of Meghan as a sultry actress. This Suits is done dealing with Meghan. It was a nightmare last season of trying to deal with Meghan and the scripts and all of this. So with Meghan solidifying her relationship to Harry, and it just makes the Suits writer, Aaron Korsh, feel like, golly, here's another round of a terrible season that we're going to have. You know, where I can't write one word I want to without having to worry that I'm going to have to replace words, you know, redo scenes. He feels like Suits needs to move away from Meghan. So, considering her new life and the need to refresh the series, Aaron Korsh, the writer of Suits, planned to write Meghan out of the series at the end of the 2017 season. It must have been bad for him to feel like he wanted to distance himself from her. Because, quite frankly, having an actress who's dating the prince would have given him more eyes. It would have given him more views for his show. But that was a sacrifice he was willing to make. Get Meghan out of here. I'm done with this. And when she gets a call from Nick Collins, her agent, about this, about how she's getting cut out, he doesn't have anything encouraging to say because he can't say, okay, well, Suits is done with you, but I mean, you knew that was probably coming to a close, but I've got other great news. I've got these directors who want to work with you. I've got these scripts I want you to read. I've got these projects that are looming. You know, take your pick. None of that. So nobody in Hollywood wanted to work with Meghan. And just as she'd feared, her acting career was stymied. Her income after 2017 was going to plummet. And she's going to need to figure something out here. So you can imagine the panic that's in her heart as all this happens. And I just have to say, again, what an absolute nightmare she should have been if nobody saw her connection to Harry as a potential for them. She truly chose the wrong coattails to ride. Because nobody in Hollywood is going to want to deal with a royal. It's just going to involve way too much interference. They know. They don't want to deal with it. No, thank you. So the only thing I can think is that she just truly saw that she wasn't going to ever get any acting. She must have had enough realization to realize, I can't act anymore. I need to find something I can do that won't require that of me. And I can bow out in such a way that I look like it's my choice. But because if she had wanted to keep acting, if that had been something she'd really wanted to do, if this was really her craft, she would have chosen to find somebody elite in Hollywood to ride that person's coattails. So meanwhile, she's getting written out of Suits. Then the palace comes to her and says, by the way, the TIG, you can't be doing that anymore. This whole lifestyle blog / how to be a woman / here's some new sex positions / here, take this for the aphrodisiac effect. It's like, you can't do that, right? So you're going to need to curb that and take it down completely. She had posted over 2,000 blogs and included 100 articles from herself, from magazines and newspapers, to nearly 1 million followers. So this was a blow. This was something she was proud of, that she'd created, that she had amassed. She'd worked countless hours on it. But that can go straight to the chopping block if need be. She writes in the beginning of April, she wrote to all of her fans, after close to 3 beautiful years on this adventure with you, it's time to say goodbye to the TIG. What began as a passion project evolved into an amazing community of inspiration, support, fun, and frivolity. You've made my days brighter and filled this experience with so much joy. Keep finding those TIG moments of discovery. Keep laughing and taking risks. And keep being the change you want to see in the world. Above all, don't you ever forget your worth. As I've told you time and time again, you, my sweet friend, are worth it. We don't need these sugary words. Like, I wasn't wondering what my worth was until I heard Meghan Markle tell me I was worth something. Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, I thought that I was nothing but a pile of dung. But now that you think I'm worth something, I can believe it too. All right. She's got that financial security, real fragile. she doesn't know what she's going to do. She decides to resign as the director of her company, Frim Frame Incorporated, which is the company from which she published the TIG. Her business manager, Andrew Mayer, and her lawyer, Rick Ganow, remained as directors just in case she should ever have the opportunity to reopen Frim Fram. But as I alluded to at the beginning of the chapter, though Meghan was making mistakes and doing things that the palace was having to sort of control, they had bigger fish to fry, quite frankly, than Meghan Markle. Their main energies were focused on Prince Charles, at the time Prince Charles, Prince Andrew, Prince William, and Prince Harry were those four princes they were trying to juggle. At this moment in time, William was currently being criticized because he had gone to Switzerland to go skiing, and he hadn't gone to this Commonwealth Day ceremony at Westminster Abbey. So people thought, why are you going out and having a good time skiing with your family? How dare you? You should have been sitting in that pew at Westminster Abbey. For shame. So they're over there slapping the back of William's hand. More importantly, Prince Andrew's behavior had troubled everyone for quite a while. He had been banned in 2011 from representing Britain as a trade ambassador because he'd made a lot of crude remarks that people found off-putting. He was known as Air Miles Andy because he was constantly being reported for his travel expenses. The media found his behavior obnoxious. And then he'd been taking loans from some real unsuitable businessmen. So they just felt that he needed to just take a seat. He was embarrassing everyone. And that relationship to Jeffrey Epstein was the cherry on top of this giant pile of mess that he had created for himself. Those photographs of him walking in Central Park with Epstein had been published by News of the World in 2011. So even though it got re-brought up a couple years ago, we had been well aware that Prince Andrew had had a relationship with Epstein. And it can be debated for centuries how serious he really was with Epstein, but enough that we are very certain that he most certainly needed to take a seat and never stand back up. Well, Randy Andy's serial misconduct was scrutinized by Christopher Gett, the Queen's tall authoritative private secretary. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. I have no doubt everyone in the comments will let me know if I am or not. But anyway, while everything in Andrew's life is falling apart and the palace is trying to maintain his image and also just, help everyone forget what he's been up to. And while there's the minor thing of William and what he's up to and people complaining about his work ethic, the greater concern that Christopher was trying to deal with was Prince Philip's feelings about Charles and any risk that Charles might pose to the monarchy when he finally became king. Charles' image as an adulterer and an old-fashioned meddler, the palace believed, needed to be transformed. I don't understand this old-fashioned meddler business. I don't know a lot about Charles, I'll be honest with you. What I do know seems to circulate completely and solely around the Diana Camilla drama. So I don't know about this old-fashioned meddler business. But anyway, they felt like his image needed to be very well worked over so that people just had good, warm feelings about him. And quite frankly, I think that the book Spare was the greatest thing to ever happen to Charles. Because even though Harry was trying so very hard to drag his dad the whole time, all anybody came away with was, what a lovely man. He's so nice. So, everything Harry does backfires. Now, to become popular, Charles needed to refrain from controversy and emerge as a discreet modernizer with a common touch. That was the belief that they felt needed to happen. That was the transforming image that he needed. Charles knew that he would need William and Harry's help in order to transform that image. So summoning his two sons, Charles' agenda at their meeting was familiar. Ever since Prince Philip had told the family's Way Ahead meeting in 1996 that to survive, the monarchy needed to slim down, Charles had tried to reduce the numbers appearing on Buckingham Palace's balcony. Among the first to be cut after 2002 was Prince Andrew and his daughters. By 2012, Charles had limited the numbers to merely 6. The Queen, Charles, Camilla, William, and Kate, and Harry. Over the following years, there were always doubts whether the slimmed-down version would survive. Would pressure from minor royals compel Charles to allow them to reappear on the balcony? The argument reemerged in August 2017. So, as the palace looked ahead towards Prince Philip's retirement and the Queen stepping down from some of her major duties and just taking on a few smaller things, they realized that they needed to reimagine how the monarchy would look with the younger set coming up. They knew that they needed to put William and Kate in the forefront because they are the monarchy's future. The plan was that the couple would be promoted as a focal point for the nation. Eventually, their children would be asked to represent the monarchy. In that scenario, Harry would be heavily engaged for the next 10 years, and then, as his royal duties declined, he would be free to pursue his own life. At that time, Harry had agreed without mentioning his frustrations. He said, okay, that's fine. I'll be sort of a stand-in for their kids until their kids are of age to represent themselves. And then Harry's star would begin to dim. Organizing his charities and starring at a few public meetings was not satisfactory in the long term. Living in a small house in Kensington Palace was becoming joyless. But life with Meghan was promising because here he could imagine that he would no longer be a nobody. Christopher suspected that Harry, with Meghan's influence, was looking for an alternative future. He didn't want to be this dying star. He wanted to always remain in the forefront, and he wanted to be important. He talked often and continually that he realized that he wasn't important, and that really bothered him. Also looming was this documentary that the princes had agreed to be part of. William and Harry were going to do a documentary about their mother. And one of the problems about this, in Christopher's mind, was that this was just going to highlight how he had no control over the four princes, Charles, Andrew, William, and Harry. He felt like this documentary was just going to make the family look fractured and scattered to the wind. He feared that their antics made protecting their privacy harder and could damage the monarchy. Excessive exposure risked reducing the public's respect for the royal family. Too late, Christopher discovered that Harry had been encouraged by Meghan to share his truth about his mental state. So already he's worried about this documentary that's coming out about Diana, which is going to reignite everybody's frustration with Charles. Then he finds out that Meghan's been whispering to Harry about how he needs to come out and talk about his mental health. God forbid it. You know, and this is my thing. I don't understand why celebrities always feel like they need to come out and be a role model for all of us and share the fact that they're, you know, their mind is melting. Are we such a dim-witted people that we can't even consider getting help unless our favorite celebrity comes out and says, also my mind is melting? Like, why in the world can't we just be like, I need help, I'm gonna go get some help? I don't need permission from famous people to be like, oh, well, since they had problems, I'm allowed to have problems. That's weird. You know, I don't need to compare my station in life to that person's station in life. Oh, they got help, I'll get help. No, just go get help. It's just, I don't understand Harry needing to come out on this in this public place and tell everybody all his problems. Pick a few people. I'm not saying go through your whole life shrouded in mystery, never tell anybody that you're struggling. No, by all means, find a few people who you can share the truth with, but there's no earthly reason why you need to be out on a public platform telling everybody about your sorrows, your troubles, and your most intimate mental details. Just let the people in your life minister to you. Everybody in the world that's not their right. They don't get to know that about you. Know where to draw the line when you share. Meghan clearly does. I mean, this is the thing that bothers me. We've seen that she's had relationships in her life with people who have helped her to get a leg up that she never said anything about because she knew I shouldn't probably share those specific details. When it suits her, she knows when not to share things. She wants the world to know that Harry has mental health crisis. Then she gets to be the one in the couple that is steady and stable and thought well of. If everyone thinks that he is already dim and now he has all these mental health crises, it's going to make her star shine brighter. Harry comes out. He had first disclosed his mental anguish at a Heads Together event in Kensington Palace. He says to them, as though it had never occurred to anyone, anyone can suffer from mental health problems, even a member of the royal family. Okay, thanks, Elmo. We had no idea that that was possible. He wanted everybody to be talking about their mental health. He wanted everyone to speak up about it. And the thing is that in these interviews, he did seem charming and gracious and relaxed. And so it was a side of him that people were drawn to. I just want to be very clear. I am not saying that you need to shut up about your mental health and you can't share if you're struggling and you can't tell anybody if there's a problem and you can't. I'm not saying that. By all means, speak if you need to. I just wonder why Harry felt like he had to, I mean, before this, he never would have been like, let me just splash all of my feelings out there, because he's the one who says that he never was able to verbalize how he felt about the sadness with his mom and all of this stuff. Then Meghan comes into his life and is like, you know, you need to tell everybody all this stuff that's going on about you. Then you'll be able to heal from it. I just wish she hadn't been such an armchair psychologist and let him get some real help. Anyway, Harry's problem struck a chord. The public sympathy increased. Encouraged by Meghan that his old British stiff upper lip should be replaced with honest confession, Harry offered himself to Brian E. Gordon, a British journalist at the Daily Telegraph, as a haunted victim, addressing the catastrophic impact of Diana's death on his life. Even though the palace had told him, let's just not tell everybody all the things, he came out and laid bare his total chaos since 2012 to a woman who confessed to having also suffered from personal problems. She said that her problems were alcoholism, depression, and drug addiction. All things that we know that Harry has also struggled with. So having Gordon over there to listen to all of his problems, it must have just been a meeting of two minds. He says to Gordon, I just didn't know what was wrong with me. I'd probably been very close to a complete breakdown on numerous occasions. But he thanked William for urging him to seek psychiatric help. He said life had become better off once he had offloaded his stuff to somebody else. And didn't I say that when I was reviewing Spare, that his problem is that he needs to tell somebody else all the stuff in his life and he needs them to make it okay. He can't just bear his own emotional burden. He's got to find somebody who can help him carry the load. He said that losing his mom at the age of 12 had shut him down emotionally, and his way of dealing was to stick his head in the sand. We know this well from Spare. He said that keeping quiet had just made the problems worse, and so he felt that his only recourse in life to get better was to come out and speak to a newspaper about it. But to me, this is just another way of being self-centered. Because you can empower the world without having to tell all of your personal details. It doesn't have to just always be about you. If you want to have a positive impact on the world, then go out and be a positive person doing positive things. That, honestly, I feel like is more uplifting and empowering than listening to somebody tell about how mentally degraded they are. I get done listening to that and I feel low. But when I watch somebody go out and do great things, I'm not even saying that he couldn't have ever mentioned, I've really struggled with the death of my mother. But to come out and just talk about his total chaos and how he's just, his mind is melting and how he couldn't hardly pull it together and he's, you know, constantly emotionally irregulated. I think that that does less for people than to just go out and see you doing great things, because we already know the story about his mom. We can already imagine how hard it was. But for him to rise above it, that is, I think, what inspires people. Well, Christopher was horrified by Harry's promise of future confessions. This had already been damning enough that he'd come out and say all these things to Brian E. Gordon in the Daily Telegraph. So he gathers a meeting of the minds. He gets everybody together because he wants to give everyone the message. Hey, you guys, listen up. Your first duty is to the Queen. It's not to you and all your pet projects and you're acting out, you're wilding out. It's not you getting a chance to air all your personal indignities. It's not you being able to be self-indulgent around the clock. That's not what your role is. You're supposed to be honoring the Queen. So why don't you all just pump the brakes on all of your self-pity? Why don't you just start looking for work that you can do for the Queen? And all these pet projects need to be put to the wayside. Everyone should work to serve the Queen. That was the resounding message that Christopher wanted to get across. He was over there trying to coordinate the efforts of all the houses between the princes. And of course, Harry didn't have his own house yet, but you know, he could see that coming. So he's got the 4 princes and he wants everybody to have the same goals in mind, the same ambition. These are the projects. This is what we're doing. As houses, we're coordinating. You don't have your thing and you're your thing and you're your thing and you're your thing. No, we're all here together. Well, for the first time, it's not Harry griping about the Queen's staff. Andrew and Charles hated this. And though they had been at odds with each other before, they united in this. And they came together and they said, Mother, get rid of that guy. What is this plan that he has? We hate it, we hate it, we hate it. Get rid of him. And the Queen capitulated and got rid of Christopher. And as Christopher left, he warned them, all right, fine, but I'd keep an eye on Meghan. because he had foreboding about how this was going to go down. He could see the way the wind blew, whether anybody else could see it or not. But even though Christopher had warned everybody, keep an eye on Harry. He is a problem, and so is Meghan. And her in his ear about his mental health and making him come out and make all these statements and exposing himself. We have worked so hard in his behalf, and he's just about to blow it. Keep an eye on him. This is what Christopher says as he leaves. But even for all of his warnings, even all of his predictions, he had not been able to predict Harry's self-destructive confession to Angela Levin for Newsweek magazine the following month. He said outright, "Is there anyone of the royal family who wants to be king or queen? I don't think so, but we all carry out our duties at the right time." Speaking for William and himself, he placed the brothers together on one pedestal. "We're involved in modernizing the British monarchy. We're not doing this for ourselves, but for the greater good of the people." It's unacceptable for him to be over here putting William's name in his mouth and saying, we. What is he talking about? He has no right to say William and I. And listen to the other things he says after this. Speaking for William, Tom Bauer goes on to say that this information about how we are involved in modernizing the British monarchy was a surprise for those who criticized the Yorkshire brothers for fulfilling just a fraction of the engagements of other royals, including their grandparents. Even more flippant was Harry's warning that an ordinary royal family would take away the firm's mystery. "Well, it's a tricky balancing act. We don't want to dilute the magic. The British public and the whole world needs institutions like it." I mean, what is this about how, we don't want to dilute the magic for the dirty, filthy masses with their sticky mouths and dirty hands who want their little picture shows? What is this? I mean, how dare he talk about people as though we don't... You guys are just human beings over there who just happen to have titles. And what is this about how, we don't want to dilute the magic? You don't want to dilute what magic? We're not watching magic happen over here. You guys are an ordinary family with ordinary problems. There was a novelty in Harry as a constitutional expert, suggesting that he and William would decide the monarchy's fate. "We want to make sure the monarchy lasts and are passionate about what it stands for, but it can't go on as it has done under the Queen." He suggested that the Queen endorsed their right to decide the future. "The Queen tells us to take our time. The monarchy is a force for good, and we want to carry on the positive atmosphere that the Queen has achieved for over 60 years, but we won't be trying to fill her boots." What has he ever done that has given him the authority to speak like this? That he is the one, he's the rudder of this ship. What is he talking about? "I sometimes still feel like I'm living in a goldfish bowl, but I now manage it better. I'm now fired up and energized, and I love charity stuff and meeting people and making them laugh." Charity stuff? "No child should be asked to walk behind a coffin, but I've made the best of it. Even though the whole time, my entire life, I've always thought, oh my God, get me out of here now." This is a terrible interview. Somebody should have rushed in there, clapped their hand over his mouth, and dragged him out of his seat. I think what's also very interesting is that in the same interview, he went out to say that he has always disliked being the spare and that he feels like there's a small window where people are interested in him, but then William's kids are going to come rip-roaring in and take his place. He said that, anticipating that insignificance, he always wanted to make something of his life, and if he couldn't do that, then he wanted to just get out of the royal family altogether and live an ordinary life. So it would prove that anonymity was never his original ambition. He did want to make something of himself. He did want to be known. And then barring that, he, thought about retreating, but his ambition was for everyone to know him. And this was a new Harry. Liberated by Meghan, he was willfully careless of the consequences of his quote-unquote truth. He just went in saying whatever came to his mind. So to end this chapter, those interviews were incredibly damning and incredibly hurtful to the family, incredibly hurtful to the image of the family, and Christopher's worst fears had indeed materialized. Because when you put into conjunction the situation with Harry's interviews, and then you added that onto the documentary that William and Harry had made about their mother, the state of people's opinion of the royal family, and of Charles in particular, had begun to degrade. In that documentary, they hadn't made any mention of their father, But it just reminded everybody that they blamed Charles and Camilla for their mother's misery, and that was not the image that people wanted put forth about Charles, right there on the cusp of him eventually taking the crown. Charles's hope that William and Harry would agree to support Camilla's future queen seemed uncertain at that moment in time. I think things have significantly shifted, especially in William's relationship with his father. So much has changed since Harry has really come out and been a terrible person, and everybody knows that he's disloyal. That has cemented Charles and William together in ways that nothing ever could have. But at the time that this book was written, it was very uncertain what kind of support William and Harry were going to be giving to Charles and Camilla. I have gone way over on this, so I'm going to have to wrap this up really quick, but I will see you guys later this week. Hope you have a wonderful week. Bye.